presuming that you're all secondary RE teachers.
We're not.
Oh, okay.
We're looking for ideas to maybe adapt the work of planning out year 5 and 6 curriculum.
Are you familiar with all of our many primary Catholic social teaching resources?
Yes.
Good, because I'm not going to touch on them at all today, so it's all the
And
secondary
we just
stuff.
started the Kambalu
With Ben,
yeah.
you've got all of that already, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Good. You're very welcome. So,
We're not missing anything.
yeah.
Because I know Key Stage 3 stuff is really good.
There's a lot in Key Stage 3. What's interesting with the RED, just as people are arriving, and then I'll sort of say a bit more, I know there's some recording here, but Beth and I were on the working groups of the RED, so
Yes.
it'd be interesting to get feedback about that, bearing in mind we're not advisors and we were sort of just there on the edges and, sort of support as and when. But it was interesting when the RED was eventually published, and I suddenly saw mention in I think year 4 of our human dignity animation, which is something we produced for GCSE. And I was sort of like, oh, that's interesting. But I think some primary teachers have found it helpful for a primary perspective as teachers for formation.
Using more stations of the cross resources for year 6, extensively year 6 reg, and it fits the use case.
Brilliant. Good.
Not the same.
Susan, forgive me if I got this wrong. Is there not a primary version of the human dignity book? Because there is one for Legato C, and as a secondary teacher, I always have to be careful not to click the primary one by accident.
Yeah, there's not. So Laudato Si, we did a primary version and a young person version. When we did Fratelli Tutti, we've just gone for one version. But with the animations, the main animations that I'll be referring to today were aimed at either the GCSE for Human Dignity or Key Stage 3 for the other 3. But the primary team have just put together a new animation, which I'm not including today because it's aimed at primary, which is an introduction to Catholic social teaching. But we've got a different one already, but you might find it useful too, and I don't think there's any harm in looking at it and revisiting the primary one as well. But I don't know if you want to just start.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you'd already started.
I'm just like.
Hi everyone, Dave from ATCRE. So I'm just chairing the room here, but obviously Susan's going to be doing most of the talking. Susan's from CAFOD, and she's obviously going to share a lot about Catholic social teaching, embedding in our practice. But I'll let her obviously do all of that and hand over now. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. So yes, so Susan Kambalu was an RE teacher, head of RE I taught in Swanwick in Derbyshire, and then I taught in Haringey in Woodgreen, North London, before joining CAFOD. So I've sort of taught in different places, and I've been at CAFOD for quite a while now doing the CPD programme, so it's always great to be here. I'm very conscious that many of you might be very familiar with our resources already. And sort of what I've done is just trying to take the element of Catholic social teaching specifically and to pull that out and identify that as we go along. And feel free to ask questions. It might not be quite as interactive as I normally would do, because there was an awful lot to get through in about half an hour. But it's, to help you to understand how we can help you in looking at the RED, specifically looking at Catholic social teaching. Just as a reminder, we do have some resources with us today. Please do take them away if they're at all helpful. It means that Beth and I don't have to carry them home with us. But don't worry if you don't take, because we can get them home and we'll use them in other places as well. But you can order those resources yourself that we've got there from the shop. We've obviously got loads of resources on our website, and if you visit the secondary pages and scroll down to the bottom, there is an opportunity for you to sign up for our e-news, where you'll get monthly emails about our most up-to-date resources and new resources. And I just thought, and it was lovely listening to Susan earlier on today, that element of sort of starting everything with a prayer. So I thought, let's just sort of have a little bit of a moment of just gathering ourselves just now, and thinking particularly about our world, thinking about all of those interwoven, that cobweb of relationships where we're all connected. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. We gather as your people, Lord, in this time and in this place. Give us eyes open to the needs of all your creation, hearts open to the call of all your creation, and hands open to do your work for all your creation. Amen. This prayer and many other prayers are on the secondary pages. If you look at prayers for young people, and they're all listed by theme. Again, all the time I say this, I'm sort of like, people will know this, but you might not have done, so it's just a little reminder. I just wanted to sort of mention specifically at the moment, it's not so much about CST and the RED, but it does link to CST in the Catholic life of your school. Have Have any of you been using our Lent prayer calendar this year, our Lent calendar? It's very different this year. There's been a big change. So if you've used it in the past, and you've not looked at it this year, you might not realise that, or you might have looked at it and realised it was different from the previous ones and thought it wasn't really what you were wanting. Those of you that have used it, it would be really helpful for us to get some feedback and evaluation from you about how useful it is, because it's a very different thing. We're trying something different, so we need to know if it works or not. So instead of having a daily prayer, we've got a weekly sort of theme. And it covers a range of different things, but there's always a section which is one of the reading either from the Sunday Gospel or one of the other readings from the Sunday. And there's a section in there which is about Lectio Divina, and this is partly because we're trying to respond to the extra demands perhaps that are put on some of you, not extra for many of you, but from the Prayer and Liturgy Directory as well, and that opportunity of Lectio Divina. There are slides that are in there explaining what Lectio Divina is for your members of staff that are not sort of with that, or sort of feeling confident. There is also, and I don't think I've put all the slides in, but there is a reflection each day which you can, well, not each day, there's one for the week, but you can mix all of this up however you want it throughout the week. But there's a reflection, you can press a button and there is a reflection, but there's slides that show you the words of the reflection. And then there's little comments and thoughts just for sentence, just for starters and discussion. Yeah, that's the reflection, which then has the reflection on it. But there is then a slide which is hidden, which refers to that. And the reason I've got week 3, that's obviously this week coming, so for next week, and it is Jesus in the Temple. And our Lent story this year is focusing on the sort of families of Mary and James and other communities in Liberia who are fisher folk and are using technology to support their fishing. So we've got there some reflections, sort of statistics to do with technology around the world, a little bit of a discussion perhaps about that. And then we're trying to make those links back again to Catholic social teaching. So although this is supporting the Catholic life of your school, we hope, because as a school you all need to be sort of responding to Catholic social teaching. There is a sort of, we know it's in the RED and everything as well, so that's sort of at the back of Jessie's mind as she's putting this together, sort of the RED, the PLD, the CSI framework, Catholic Life and Mission. We're trying to do our best to meet as many of those demands in one resource that can support you generally, support your students, and try to make really meaningful context examples to our whole world. So just to sort of say there are these things there, thank you very much. If there's anybody that's not saying this, I'm just trying to get an idea of which schools you're in, that's really helpful for us to know. So if you've not signed already, please get that moving and we'll show. And there's also bits of information about the story and the work that we do in Liberia, and then little activities that might be appropriate or not. And again, we're really keen to get feedback, and that can also include, I was looking at some heads of RE, and they were sort of saying some of the activities perhaps are more RE focused, and they wouldn't necessarily have other form tutors feeling so confident with that, so might want more notes. So I'm just sort of, this is my preamble to everything else really. So, I don't know what I've done there, but as we're trying to get back to the last slide, which I'll go back in a moment, I've got some handouts as well to share with you. One of these is passing them. This is the same resource, so hopefully there'll be enough copies. That's the video, I don't show you. And in relation to Catholic social teaching, some of you might have already picked up on our flyers. What we've done is we've taken lots of the animations and the videos from our RED content on Catholic social teaching, and we've put them into a module which is an online standalone module for teachers. So there's 2 sets of CPD resources. One of them is it's PowerPoint slides and it's fully scripted and there's interactive activities, and you can do that as a whole school CPD yourself, Introduction to Catholic Social Teaching. And then there's an online module that if you've got new teachers that come in after you've done that sort of whole school stuff, you can then sort of share that with them. You might have picked this one up already, but if not, please feel free to take the flyers and pass them around as well. I think it's going online by Monday. I thought it was going to be online today. I don't think it's all online, but the website's there. I just don't think the online module is there at the moment. That then is my preamble. You'll all be familiar, I'm sure, with your secondary teachers with the RED, the branches, and the sort of content of the branches. These are not titles or anything, this was just me trying to summarise for myself the sort of content that you can find in each of the branches in the new RED. Can I just get a quick show of hands, or sort of thing, in relation to the, or a bit of conversation perhaps, in relation to the RED? I was meeting with heads of RE just yesterday in one diocese, and they were sort of saying, as a diocese, they're working on Year 7 this year. They've all been producing resources and schemes of work to do Year 7, and they're all getting ready now to start resourcing Year 8. It'd be good just to get a feel. I mean, is that the situation that you're in? Just sort of wave your hand if you're sort of, yeah, we're just, yeah, perfect. Because as we're going through, obviously, I will be sharing with you resources for Year 7, and it might be that you've used them all already, or that you're sort of thinking, I can't squeeze anything else into this, so why are you telling about Year 7? So I'll try then to sort of, look at links to Year 8 as well. With the RED, and these are the sort of topics that are there, these are examples of things that are written within the RED, which are specifically related to CAFOD. And it's sort of just to basically give a bit of an overview for you. And I think, hopefully, I do have got enough. For the next, this is one of the future slides, but it's sort of got those headings just so that you've got them handy. And what I'm going to do, what this is all the resources we currently have for the RED by resource. But just to see, there'll be some partners of ours that are mentioned that they don't say they're CAFOD partners, so you wouldn't necessarily know like who this person is or why are they mentioned. So I'm just explaining to you now, because I was on the RED thing, but as we were having conversations, all of us in the writing group were sort of suggesting, oh, maybe you could look at this person, or maybe we could look at that organisation. And we're trying to get a global sort of reach with that. So some of the people that are mentioned, Davi Kopenawa Yanomami, he's been a partner of CAFODs for many years. He lives in the Brazilian rainforest, and he's one of the leaders of the Yanomami people. So he's a key person. He's been over to visit us as CAFOD. I've met him, and we're like, oh, we could definitely, write some sort of resource there. And this is under the prophetic voices. And so when you're looking in Year 8 Branch 2 at modern day prophets, and you could be looking at St. Oscar Romero, of course, another long-time partner of CAFOD, and we've got loads of resources, and I'm sure you know that already, about St. Oscar Romero. But there's also that question, there's a question in there, a discern question about, do prophets have to be Christian? Can people that are not Christian be prophets, and have a discussion around that? It's not sort of right, I'm not giving a right or wrong answer, but the work that Davi is doing is, is really prophetic. But the difficulty then is at the moment we're not able to produce new resources about him because his life is currently under threat, which happens quite a lot with a lot of our partners, to be honest. And they're particularly doing a lot of advocacy work in relation to mining within the rainforest, and his son as well is involved with the Yanomami people. So when there are specific examples, it might mean that we'll be able to produce a resource about somebody else who's doing the same sort of thing. Mashimbanzu, amazing partner of ours in Zimbabwe and Harare. I'm sort of telling you this now so you've got it in your head that you can then tell the story. It's not that we've got a resource for this. But they, Mashimbanzu, work with people who are living with HIV and AIDS, and they've been around for a long time. And Mashimbanzu is the time of the day when the elephants go to the water in the very early hours of the morning. That's what it means. And the reason the organisation is because that was the time they were finding people were dying at the very sort of, almost just before dawn sort of time. And they were accompanying people through death. But of course, with the amazing sort of work of ARVs and the sort of steps forward in relation to HIV and AIDS, they're now accompanying people to live and to live really sort of wonderful lives and do sort of income generation. But there's lots of more complex issues there, and the reason why it is in this is in response to suffering, and you might be looking at euthanasia, etc. And so it comes up in that unit. But there's lots of issues why people might not be taking ARVs, and they might not have enough food to eat to be able to take the ARVs. So I met somebody, and they have a clinic there as well to sort of help to get people back to health again, and then they visit people in their homes and check that everybody's doing well. But I spoke to one man and sort of said, why are you in hospital? What's your story? And we were talking. And he was saying, well, I stopped taking my ARVs, and I was asking why. And it was because he had a job as a driver, sort of, like minibus driver. But he didn't have enough food to eat, that when he was taking the ARVs, they were making him ill, so he couldn't work. So he stopped taking the ARVs so that he was able to work, but then he got ill because of the HIV. And that was why he was back in hospital getting sort of treated and brought back to strength again. So these are some stories that were sort of in my mind that I was thinking this is a lovely sort of story to share about the work of a Catholic organisation founded by religious sisters originally from Ireland, and sort of, they've been working there in Zimbabwe and Harare for many years. But we might not be able to sort of share some of the stories, but they're examples of the sort of work that we do, which we are trying to, we will be working out how to share these. And I mean, it's great here to have Minna here from OUP, isn't it? Sort of thing. We worked really closely with them, and we have been in touch with some of the writers from Hodder as well, to make sure that these stories might be in the textbooks that you're using too. So that's a little bit of an overview. These are the resources that we currently have to support all of the aspects of the RED, and this is the sheet that hopefully everybody's managed to get a copy of. So as you can see, what we've done is we've taken all the resources we currently have, we've made some new ones specifically for the RED, but we've tried to match them there. So we're hoping that you've got lots of opportunities to reflect global justice issues and in solidarity with our sisters and brothers around the world at different points in the RED. We are wanting to create 3 new resources over the next couple of years. We have a climate change photo pack that many of you might know, and it is online available, and it's due to be refreshed. We try and make sure that our resources are no more than 5 years out of date, because obviously, particularly when we're featuring children and young people, they grow up and they might give an informed consent for their story to be shared, but after 5 years that's our sort of limit there. So it needs to be updated, but we thought the climate change photo pack isn't necessarily doing all that it used to do, because it was a joint RE geography unit. But we're thinking we might replace that with something similar as a photo pack, so something physical, but looking at the different principles of Catholic social teaching and sharing stories, because obviously climate and Laudato Si and stewardship would be one of them. So again, it'd be really good to get a little bit of feedback from you about whether or not you think that would be helpful. Should we invest the time in doing that, or do you just want things that are online, for example? We need to make judgments about the sorts of resources that we produce. The other one that we'd like to do, one of the things about being on the writing group was we were having these amazing conversations about the catechism, and I have to confess, my degree was biblical studies, and so the whole, a lot of the theology I was getting up to speed with in the church history, but also the catechism. I'd never read the catechism from beginning to end, and it was quite new, sort of new bits and pieces. I did listen to Catechism in a Year last year, which if any of you are familiar with it, if you're not familiar with it, it's worthwhile having a listen to the podcast. But we were looking at the 10 Commandments, and in the 10 Commandments, you're probably all very familiar with this now. If you read the Catechism about the 10 Commandments, it's actually really exciting, really life-giving, because they look at the Commandments and say, what does this look like today? And when it looks at bearing false witness, thou shalt not bear false witness, it talks about the importance of journalism and of journalists telling the truth. And it's a bit like speaking truth to power. So there's all sorts of issues you can get in there, because do our journalists all tell the truth? That's an initial sort of thing. But also the fact is that we work with a lot of people who are, and some of them are actually journalists, but a lot of them are speaking out, and human rights defenders, etc., who are speaking truth to power, who are putting their lives on the line in order to reveal the truth. So what we'd like to do is try to get together a series of stories about these people who are in those sort of journalism positions, and link it back to, the 10 Commandments and the RED. So that'd be like a new resource. It's a very specific resource. And the other one in human dignity in year 9, branch 1, there's a section there on human dignity, and one of the live sections, one of the examples, because obviously you've got a lot of choice in the live section, but one of the examples there is talking about stereotypes and the ethics of image use. And again, that's partly because it's something really important for us, and we've been doing it recently, post-RED, it happens to be in CAFOD, a lot of anti-racist communications, and just trying to make sure that all of our resources are as deliberately anti-racist and sensitive and, not stereotypes and whatever, which I think we tend to have been doing quite well already. But we've had guidelines on the ethics of image use and human dignity, comes through really strongly there for a long time. So we thought it might be that we can take something round about the work that we are doing internally, we're working with partners all over the world, and produce that into a resource that fits into the human dignity sort of sections. So, but at the moment, like I say, we're trying to work out what might be more useful. So if we were to prioritise just one for this year, it'd be really good if you could just fold your hands if you think we should work on the CST photo pack, Put your hand up if you think the one resource we should focus on this year is getting ready for Year 8 Branch 1, the CAFOD Partners Speaking Truth in the Media. And stand up if you think it's something about the resource, a resource on the ethics of image use.
Sorry, what are the options?
So the first option is a photo pack looking at Catholic social teaching, but it's a physical photo pack, different stories and images to do with different principles of Catholic social
What
teaching.
do with my body? I don't quite...
And in that case, just cross your
Yes.
arms. If you think the priority for this year should be a resource about CAFOD partners who are speaking truth in the media linked to the 10 Commandments in Year 8 Branch 1, put your hand up. And if you think it's a resource on ethics of image use, stand up. Should we do that just then one more time? This is great. It is about half and half on those top two. Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's really helpful. Just before I go on, any questions or anything so far? Any comments? Any reflections?
Is that just for Key Stage 3, or are you extending down sort of 5, 6?
This is all Key Stage 3. Beth will be working with whichever publishers are going to be wanting to produce resources for early years to Year 6.
So if you will publishers with this?
It'll either be us on our website, we will have resources on our website that are looking specifically at some of the branches, some of the resources within early years to Year 6. So yeah, and we've clearly got all the resources that we've got at the moment as well, but there might be some new ones specifically for that. What I've done over the last week was I then had a little look about Catholic social teaching specifically in the RED, because that is the title of the sort of thing here. Obviously, you'll all be familiar with Year 7 Branch 1, where it sort of specifies Catholic social teaching. You have the opportunity to explore Catholic social teaching. It talks specifically about stewardship in relation to the 4 core principles of Catholic social teaching. Have you all got copies of DUCAT, by the way? Excellent, because I see that the Catholic Truth Society's here. I think they've got copies of DUCAT as well. Because I was at another sort of heads of RE and they were sort of talking about the compendium of social justice. DUCAT. So you all know UCAT. Do you all know UCAT? Or you might. So UCAT, looking at the Youth Catechism. DUCAT is the blue book, which is looking at the compendium of social justice and taking it for young people. And DUCAT is referred to in the RED as well as the Catechism and the compendium itself, and it's just a little bit easier to sort of grapple with it. It's got nice pictures, little animation-y things. So the 4 foundational principles of human dignity, common good, subsidiarity, and solidarity, linking those to stewardship. Mentioned really specifically. Every so often there are very clear mentions to human dignity. What the RED doesn't always do is then specify the other CST principles that are being referred to. But as you can see, there is a very clear underpinning within all of those different aspects of the RED where you can make links to Catholic social teaching. There's a lot, particularly round about Spring Term 2, that's Branch 4, relation to the preferential option for the poorest and most vulnerable in our communities. There's a lot there about, as well, people living on the margins, and that's your opportunity sort of to explore that. In relation to Branch 6, dialogue and encounter, and of course Fratelli Tutti, the message of Fratelli Tutti comes across really strongly in Branch, it will do, in relation to the culture of encounter. But also there's different aspects as well down here where Fratelli Tutti is mentioned as well. Oh, sorry. That's not the right thing either, is it? So there are opportunities to... This one I don't have because I only just finished it last night, sorry. There's been a lot going on.
Could we take a picture?
You can take a picture.
Just at the end, just to
interrupt
your...
Definitely. This is a reminder, obviously, of the legacies of the RED. And although CAFOD will often come up into the live section, our resources do cover other aspects of the other legacies. This is just a little reminder. And of course, the ways of knowing very much focused on the sort of Catholic social teaching, See Judge Act, the pastoral cycle, which is great. So there's that sort of strong underpinning in terms of your ways of knowing, understanding, discerning, responding. And our resources can help you at different aspects of the different learning outcomes. An example in Year 7 Branch 1 In the understanding, you've got your links to the specifics of, understanding Catholic social teaching. There is a discern question that talks about the CAFOD Live Simply Award, and it's about making your links between stewardship and human dignity. And there's a respond, how can you live in solidarity with other creatures? So what I'm trying to sort of say here is you can take a variety of the different outcomes, put them together. We've got resources to support different aspects of that. We haven't written them like, plans to, we don't have like lesson plans for you. But if we were longer together, we could sort of do a little bit of a mini lesson showing some of the resources. But I do want you to do something. I'm sure you're all familiar with the CST in 3 minutes. I wasn't planning on showing that to you. Hopefully you're also familiar with the CST card. Again, it's just reminding you you've got resources that are already there. Good way of learning about Catholic social teaching. And hopefully for those of you in secondary, you're all familiar with our animations.
Yeah.
And I do have with me, if anybody wanted them, sort of little handouts of the overview of those different animations. I'm going to pull out this one too. I hope there's enough. I'm not sure if there's enough of this, but hopefully there's enough of that one. This is food, which I'll come to. I'm just looking at the time and wanting to get onto a little bit of activity. Are you all familiar with Live Simply? The Live Simply Award is, an award that you as a school might want to look into. We do have animations and instructions on how to do that. But the reason that I've included it here is because it is mentioned in Year 7 Branch 1 as something that you can investigate, and it is a way to live out Catholic social teaching in a variety of ways. Have you done a sort of inner wheel, outer wheel activity? Is that something? Let's just do that. Okay, so I'm going to assume, I'm telling you a lot of things, and I'm assuming that you've got all of this sort of knowledge from the things that we've looked at just now. And I want to demonstrate, I'd like to do 2 activities with you before 10 minutes to get you up and moving around. So, there are 3, 6, 12, 6. So if we could have sort of the 6 of you on this side, if you could all stand up and then come to the front and stand in a circle with your backs to each other so you're facing out the way, and we'll just do a quick just stand in the middle, stand in a circle with your backs to each other, facing with your backs to each other, face that way, backs, all in a circle. That's how you're all in. Thank you. Sorry, I'm just taking you and pushing you. Sorry, maybe take a step back again. Now the rest of you, stand up and face one of these people. Come and join. So you're just in here facing each other. It's dead straightforward. It's nothing too fancy. Sorry. But I just want us to have a little bit of an experience of what this is like. You can take one step forward, but you take one step backwards. That would be just to give a wee bit more room. I'm hoping if there might be counting properly.
Hello, I'm Daniel. What's that?
Has everybody got somebody that you're facing? Have you got an extra person? So there's like, is that so 2 can't play? Oh no. You can still stand and watch. So what I'm going to do, I want you to imagine that we've done a lesson, we've learned about language.
Yes.
Oh,
right. Okay.
And you, class. Okay, sorry. That's okay. You will have an opportunity to talk to each other in a moment. I want you to imagine you've done a lesson, you've learned about Catholic social teaching, some of the principles, and you've maybe looked at the Live Simply Award as well. So I'm hoping at least one of you in the group might know a little bit about that. And I'm going to give you 1 minute to talk with the person opposite you. What has human dignity got to do with stewardship? What's human dignity got to do with stewardship? You've got 1 minute to have a conversation with the person opposite you.
By protecting the environment and showing your neighbour dignity, because by not blowing my car 5 minutes, I'm not releasing CO2 into the atmosphere, which destroys the environment. Yes. I think we have a dignity as people. We've been given authority, dominion. Which is a great relational bond. Dominion, not the minions, guys. Have you ever done that with yours?
No, I've done one from 2 days ago. It's a minion.
Yes. Yeah, I do that as well. Pick it in the fish.
I find this what you sort of do is positive creation topic of GCSE ultimately. I think it's
Well, thank you. Well, I want everybody on the outside circle.
Okay, yeah.
I want you all to take one step to the right, or maybe it might two, but to the next person. So everybody on the outside move round to the next person. You're now talking to a different person.
Hello.
Now, I could, at this point, ask you to look at the same question again, and then you've got the ideas you heard from the last person and you're adding them to your conversation and developing them. That's not what I'm going to do today. I'm going to ask you a second question. How could working towards the Live Simply Award, which we haven't looked at the video, but hopefully you have a vague idea what it is, help our school community to both live out human dignity and be good stewards? So again, human dignity stewards, but we're now throwing in the Live Simply Award. Question is on this.
Does your school do this? So there's a direct link. Yeah, we've got a food bank, but we also have a vetting patch up. But I don't think I don't really know what happens to those. Yeah, I don't know what happens to it. I just see kids working on it. Yeah, and every so every so often I'll bring back teaching or statue of St. Francis Assisi. So every time I walk past, that's my St. Francis. But yeah, I think it's just evidence in it. Yeah, if we were to do, but yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. The connect, You'll have to get a new one. Yeah.
I mean, I do it, we all do it.
I went to school where someone did video I don't know if they can get excused since, but I mean, I know a parish in Grimsby in the Diocese of Nottingham, and the parish owns bees. If they've got away with health and safety, that's what they're it's on our list of ideas we could do, but there's just so much.
What we're going to do now is the people on the inside are going to take a step to the right, and hopefully you'll be another new person. So as long as we're always going to the right, but the people in the middle, go to
This
the right.
relies a lot on our ability.
The question is,
I do, yeah.
and I'm sorry everyone interrupted my introduction, which is so important about our web.
I've been blessed to say I've been to libraries,
Third question.
I'm in between Coventry and
What is the
Leicester.
connection between living sustainably and living in solidarity with other people? Go.
You go first, I'm still not as
That was very sharp. Thank you. People, sorry, that was really short. People on the right and another in the middle, another step to the right. And for people on the outside, a step to the right as well. 2. So go to the right and then to the right. Just this is just
Sorry. Am I getting my
Anyway, the first question is clearly just do it one at a time. How could we in our school show solidarity with all creatures? Because that is one of the things we looked at in that outcome before. How can we show solidarity with all creatures? Go. Thank you. Stop. Sorry, that really wasn't very long. I'm sorry for talking my conversations as well. I don't know, some of you might have mentioned some schools I know actually have animals that you're looking after in school, and also some people, when I've had this conversation before, we've talked about, for example, pollution in the oceans, and that's why we don't have as many straws and whatever, so there's different things you can get out with that one. This activity as itself can be used in a variety of ways, and one way that we often use it is you have the people on the inside are going to agree with a statement. So you know when you've got your discern statements, you can have your discern statement say, right, everybody in the middle, you're going to agree. Whether you agree with it or not, you're going to agree. People on the outside are going to disagree. And then you say, people on the inside, you've got 30 seconds to speak, and then stop, and then people on the outside, you've got 30 seconds to respond, and then you move around, and you might start by saying, well, this is what the last person said, and I disagree because, and then they say, well, I heard this, and I, disagree because of it. But you're gradually building up more ideas, and of course you can use that with GCSE and everything as well, but it's all about setting the scenes, so that's one thing you can do. How was that as an activity? Excellent. I'm going to get you to do another one now, so squeeze in before past. So another thing we've got is have you used a horseshoe continuum? You know a continuum, I think I've done this with, where you sort of make a statement and it's agree or disagree, and you sort of stand in a line, and this is the same in social media. Those people at the strongest opinions are either not talking to each other or they're shouting at each other. And people in the middle are going, oh, well, we think the same thing, so we don't really speak to each other yet. What we're going to do with the horseshoe continuum is slightly different. It's the same starting point. I'm going to imagine that we've already done an awful lot of sessions on the Eucharist, which you're obviously doing at the moment. And then what I've done is I will have shared with you, we've looked at the subsidiarity animation and the common good animation, we've made links to food justice, because we've got food justice resources there. We've spoken about Bishop Gomez, who was in charge of Caritas Bangladesh, another CAFOD partner, because we're part of Caritas, who had said the most un-Eucharistic situation in the world is the fact that so many of our sisters and brothers go hungry. So we've looked at that in the lesson. We've looked at some of what I passed around earlier, the food. We've looked at the issue of food in Catholic social teaching in the scripture. We've looked at, by the way, there's also climate change and water and poverty, as just as a help sheet for all of you. So we've thought about the Eucharist, the source and summit of Catholic life. We've thought about food injustice in the world and the global situation, the food situation there. And now we're going to take one of the discern statements from the RED. It is more important to serve the poor than to celebrate the Eucharist. And I'm going to ask you at this point, it might be that some of you are going to be willing to play a bit of devil's advocate and take on a position that is not the position that you told, just so that we can really try out this resource. I mean, you can sort of see where people will go. If there's a bit that's really missing, feel free somebody to be brave and taking that step. But I want you to think that statement, it's more important to serve the poor than celebrate the Eucharist. Do you strongly agree, serving the poor, agree, disagree, or strongly disagree? So that's, nothing's more important than the Eucharist. Come and quickly stand in a position. Like I say, you might have to take up a bit of a position on. Obviously, you've done a little bit more modelling and sort of, scaffolding before we got to this stage. You really want them to understand the sources of it and the importance of the Eucharist and all of the different issues before you do this activity. But this is just going to, it's to model the activity. So don't feel that you're not getting judged by the people that are watching. Let's just make this really clear. People are just taking up any position here. They're not necessarily going to be held in account to understand. I just want that to be really clear. Hang on. So strongly agree. It definitely is more important to serve the poor than to celebrate the Eucharist. No, serving the Eucharist is the most important thing. Brilliant. So if you've got this as a continuum, it just sort of looks like, and I might say, why have you stood there? Why have you stood there? What I want you to do instead, we're going to pair you off, and in pairs, you're going to be discussing with the person opposite you, why do you think that? Why do you hold that perspective? It's not about trying to change the mind of the person you're talking to, it's seeking to understand why they hold that perspective. And we don't have a lot of time, and I hope this is okay, because I think actually we're going to lunch. I may have gone, but if we can have like a couple of minutes just to experience this. So the two of you, you're in the most extreme positions, you're going to go over and have a conversation, just anywhere in that's fine. The two of you, next most extreme, sort of there, off there. The two of you, there we go, over here. The two of you, going to go off to the two of you.
The camera.
Sorry?
I was going to go over there actually.
Yeah, definitely. So hang on, I think I agree with that, and I'm more than it's just there, didn't it? You tell me why you think that.
I think the interest was it 74? Because I think everything comes from the Eucharist. I don't, if it's the Eucharist.
I think realistically, community was one of building up bits from there.
Let me give you 15 more seconds and then we'll go quite nuanced. Okay, that wasn't very long. Thank you. What I might do at this point, obviously, in a lesson would be say, go back and stand and have any of you change your minds. I'm not going to ask about that, but were you the most, there was somebody else who's more of an extreme, were you the most? Can we just start with you a little bit, how was that conversation? Have either of you changed your mind? What have you learned? Very briefly.
Oh, it wasn't. I like both views. I was just being extreme, just to do that. So I took it from the perspective of this idea that in order to go out and evangelise and to be strengthened by Christ and do the work, we have to. It's important for us to be spiritually nourished and receive the Eucharist, so we can then go out and evangelise. So without it, there's a piece missing.
And what did you learn?
I also learned that, and I like that point, you were talking about the time that we spend in Mass celebrating together, think what we could do if more of that time was out in the hungry.
Thank you very much. How was it as a conversation between two extreme points?
I wouldn't go there actually, I was going to go that side of the room, so I think it's really good to take a position you don't necessarily agree with, and it's interesting being on the extremes because you're forced in a way to try to give a view that is not very accommodating to the other person's perspective, and I maybe sort of come up with some arguments that I wouldn't normally advance, in order to try and be a little bit more forceful, extreme about it. So I thought it was a good model in order to try to really draw out some points.
And the skill of the room of pupils as well. I like how you say the point is not to try and convince somebody else. The point is to be open to listening to other views, and that's something that we want to develop in our room. So yeah.
And it's something you could do in staff CPD with any sort of particular issue that's going on. Actually, you were standing side by side, and I just wanted to check in how that conversation was for you. Were you still able to get something and learn from each other?
I think so. I mean, I spoke about the celebration of the Eucharist as communities coming together, and that, you mentioned that, those are important. In terms of the biggest, so Teresa said, that people say that the biggest poverty is loneliness. So having that community can actually improve things. But then we spoke about what Daniel said about was about the parable of disease nations.
I can't either, but I said I was talking about cheaper beds, yeah. But we actually realised that although we were on slightly two different sides of the middle, actually we were a lot more similar than
Now, depending on which statement you're looking at, I've done this with a variety of statements, and sometimes people in the most extreme have come back together and said, we still disagree with each other, but we're friends. Whereas before they were sort of like, oh, well, I don't disagree. Whereas other people in the middle have ended up saying, we actually realised that we'd interpreted the statement differently. We actually disagree with each other. So there's things about the clarity of the language that's being used that can come out of these conversations as well, if you realise that you're having sort of different conversations. Thank you very much. We have overrun that. I just say I've handed out on your